Welcome back to our book review, book of the month. This time we did .com Secrets by Russell Brunson. If you're in the marketing world, you probably would have heard of this book in some capacity. It's all about funnels and digital marketing. So today we're going to do a debrief, a review of the book, talk about it, find out what everyone learned from it, what we like, what we dislike, and some of the lessons that we'll take forward. It's a lengthy book. It's chock full of nuggets, I think, is what everyone has been saying to me. There's lots of tactics and nuggets in there. So let's just dive right in. Who wants to share some of their learnings from .com Secrets? Khalil, it's your birthday. Do you want to kick it off as the birthday boy?
Sure. Yeah. I think this was my favorite book so far, other than StoryBrand. I just found it like super valuable. I think the first half of the book, at least when it comes to like the production team, were kind of a little bit more disconnected from the funnels. We know about the ADA funnel and things like that. And the second half was like more about the templating and the scripts behind it. So I got value in that, but I learned a lot from the funnel kind of analysis that he had in the beginning. And I love the graphics that he was showing to show each stage of the funnel. And I really liked it. So let's see what some of the things that I said. I liked how he reverse engineered some of the successful people's funnels. So he'd go look at their funnel. You don't need to really reinvent the wheel when it comes to creating a funnel for your business, right? So there's people who have been successful at their specific niche. And I found it like pretty valuable that he just, kind of copied the template and kind of understood where they were being successful and kind of copied it like that. And then providing value at each level, I found that super interesting, right? So like as you're kind of climbing the customer through their journey, you kind of have to make that offer at each step of the journey that kind of entices them to take that next step with you. So I found that super, super valuable as well. So overall, I really liked it. I think, yeah, right up there with StoryBrand for me. And I learned a lot. So
it's interesting because like the whole funnel hacking idea there are so many examples of good creative, good landing pages, good offers and lead magnets in the wild, right? And sometimes it's just about doing the right searches and finding that and realizing that, okay, hey, there are competitors. Sometimes we try and reinvent everything from the ground up. But if there's a proven model, then we certainly should. And then the value ladder. Yeah. I'm sure a few of you in your book reports were saying like, now you realize how you've kind of gone through someone's funnel before, or you've kind of been on someone's value ladder before. And so it's interesting to see it from this perspective. Other takeaways, other learnings?
This was like my first book club experience, and honestly, it completely transformed the timing of ads for me. So I had traditionally thought of reaching our target audience in a different kind of way, and really kind of introducing ourselves to the target audience at first through awareness marketing and things like that. And clearly, after reading it, it's not the best foot forward. And so I had always thought of it like traditionally introduce ourselves to our potential audience, start providing engagement type concepts, and then we can work them down to the funnel now that they know us. But just with so much noise in the industry these days, especially, coming right out of the gate with a value proposition and a lead magnet is clearly the way to go. And so it's like it honestly has pivoted my thinking completely.
I think there was like I don't have the big book, so I can't find it offhand, but there was like the unaware, problem aware. Like, do you mean in terms of like, because we often will push out, or digital marketers will push out like awareness for a brand, and I think what you're saying is that we need to focus more on creating awareness for the problem that we're solving. Is that
exactly
what you mean?
Yeah, and providing that value like immediately to even a cold audience. Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts? Other takeaways? Yeah, Blossom.
Sorry. I can go. So it's also my first book of the month. And I've also learned a lot from the book. It's a long book. I was listening to the audiobook, and the author's voice is very energetic. And I think, content-wise, I think I learned a lot of strategies from him. And I think the key takeaway is also the reverse engineering of the competitors. So this is something that I think we have been doing, and we should also be doing more to our clients. So we were thinking, to like rebrand or like think of a new target market for them.
Yeah.
And so on this book, it says like if you're reverse engineering the competitors, you should be like seeing if this market is already existing. If it already exists, then it should be profitable. Like if it doesn't even exist, if the funnel doesn't even exist, then it might not be a profitable market to go into. So I think this is something that when we are helping our clients to come up with strategies or rebranding, this is something that we can do.
Yeah, I think they were saying that if there's something repeatable or a similar competitor, then you can reverse engineer their funnel. But there's also situations in which, like if you're working with like a disruptive technology, then you might be able to use like other competitors that are like trying to target that audience and maybe like reverse engineer their funnels to see how you speak to that audience, even if it's not like a direct competitor, if that makes sense. I think that's how it was positioned there. Okay, thanks, Blossom. Other takeaways? I know there was like lots of nuggets. Anyone want to share?
I can go.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it was already mentioned, things like the value ladder, and being able to establish a value ladder, get customers into the ladder, and then have them ascend that ladder. So you're always communicating and getting them through not just the first funnel, but all subsequent funnels after that. I think that was key, and that will keep, because it's a lot harder to acquire new customers, but it's a lot easier to keep existing ones. So if you don't have anywhere for them to move to, then they'll go somewhere else. So keeping that value ladder valuable, and then also keeping customers advancing through it. I think that's a very key aspect of the book, and mentioned a lot. Hook, story, offer. I think that's a very easy mantra. It's a very easy thing to remember. So as we're writing copy, as we are building out landing pages, websites, we should see a clear hook, a clear story, and a clear offer. So that and that's really the whole idea of a call to action. But like we need to drive them towards that call to action.
Yeah, I think that's why, like from the value ladder perspective, like that's why doing free downloadables and lead magnets, and even the freemium model for AdPuzzle, like the reason that works is because it actually gets the end user to like absorb and engage with kind of the business without actually spending any money yet. But it helps them understand, if you give X amount of value away to a client and they're like, hey, I wonder, if they're teaching me this much upfront, then imagine what they're charging, like the stuff that they're charging for, right? And I mean, even with the book, it's kind of like free plus shipping, right? But it's like the shipping's like $17. So obviously, or whatever it is. So obviously the shipping covers the book, but from their perspective, it's a loss leader because they're thinking, oh, well, like, some of you in your report were like saying, hey, I'm going to read Expert Secrets, or I'm going to sign up for this, that, or the other, or we've been looking at ClickFunnels or other tools. So the whole lead magnet idea, it only is effective if you're kind of if you're providing value and speaking to the pain point and the right audience the right way. So and there's plenty of examples of that there. So cool.
Yeah, I have that as my first point, the story of the dentist. And I like it because he says, because I had received value, I naturally, and I like to highlight this, how naturally I wanted to move forward and get additional value. And I do think that naturally is what we need to work on. So it feels that we're not pushing anything, but just like really giving true value to that user, because sometimes it feels like, oh yeah, let's steal this lead magnet, let's get it over with, the checklist,
Yeah.
we do it, right? But it really has to represent something that the client or the user will say, yes, this is contributing to my position, to my knowledge, and that will allow me to continue growing my business. So I that's exactly what I have as my first bullet.
You're right. It's like sometimes it's like we just try and ship the lead magnet just to like cross it off, but really it has to be impactful. It has to good does matter in that case, because if you're not actually adding value or solving a problem, they're not going to engage with the brand and the other offerings that they have. So
I think he's done a good job structuring the book like that too, right? He's delivering so much value, and then he has kind of his CTAs like snuck in there from time to time. Whereas StoryBrand was like a little bit more overt about their CTAs, like visit our website, but they hadn't really delivered as much value up until that point. So I found that interesting that he's like actually practicing what he's preaching.
I thought too, when he used the cell phone example, when he was trying to sell his cell phone to the audience, like I loved that, because he had his exact desired audience in the room with him, and he could just continue to offer more offers to that exact same audience, and people were just raising their hands. I thought that was incredible. And it goes to show, like, when I thought of that as an example, how when you have your audience in the room continue to make offers to them, it immediately made me think of email marketing for retail. Like they're constantly sending you emails to let you know about the new deals and things like that. And that's why I go back to those exact 3 stores that I'm on their email list, because I find out about all the deals. So
yeah, you can go into Michael's and you're gonna get like 40% off
every time.
Everyone does that. Yeah, don't ask me how I know that, but I've been trained well. Okay, good. So other thoughts, Erica, Ileana, Van?
I just like that how much he brings up like the problem solving, because we sort of do that, but then we sort of like it gets left behind. Like we're not constantly saying, hey, this is the problems we're solving for you, this is what we're solving, these are all your pain points, but we've got you covered, it's all good. So yeah, I don't know, I kind of like that.
No, it's true. You're right. It's, because you're right. Because once we get into the execution of it, we kind of lose sight of the actual problem and what we're servicing and delivering. We get caught up in does this look good, or does that look good, or is this word right, or is this CTA right? So it's just about thinking big. Yeah, we need to think big at the end of it.
I think for me, it was basically everything. I was like just marveling that the man actually made money on this book, because he's taking basic marketing principles and just respinning it into a book, just because I've been doing this for a really long time. So I think it's great as a reference book. I think I am definitely not in his target audience or his target persona, because he really I just felt he came across way too car salesman-y. So if I was a VP of marketing, which I was, right, I would never open his emails or even read the book, because he just came across to me as like, I don't have enough time to sit there and read an email that's that long that he's sending me, right? And it would just annoy me personally. So while I didn't really love the way his tone, I guess, was in the book, what I did think was valuable was like the structure that all of you talked about. Like, what's the process for developing these funnels? And as I went through the book, in my head, what I was trying to think of was like, okay, so if you were to take this, how would you apply it to Sidi.io marketing or to ad puzzle marketing? Because the funnels for both and the process for both may be a little bit different, because one's a SaaS-based platform and the target end users is consumer, right? Slide hustler, which is very different from the Sidi.io side, where the target audience is B2B tech, med tech, people like me from my former life, right? And they're completely different. And I think to the person, so that's why I think like what's pivotal in all of this is as we kind of think about, again, marketing from a CDA.io perspective or Ad Puzzle is who is that attractive personality or persona, right? Even when you guys are working on client projects, it's super, super, super important to understand your customers and persona, because everything else kind of stems from that, right? And that's kind of what he articulated all the way through the book, right? Like all the examples all of you gave, you really needed to understand who the persona was that, you know, in the case of the dentist or, you know, even in selling the book, right?
I think like, yeah, I agree. I think industry plays a big part in it too, in terms of like who we're targeting or who our clients are targeting. So, you know, if it's med tech, it's going to be very different than if it's like SaaS or, you know, professional services. Like I find that, and also in terms of like the kind of value that you're providing. So, you know, Vanny, you and I were talking about this before, where, you know, I'm kind of like, for our business, I'm going out there putting out videos, and not all of it's about digital marketing. Some of it's like, this is my kid, this is, you know, our team getting together, this is, and it's not necessarily specifically about the pain point, but what it does is it kind of, it builds out the attractive character and helps to like re-engage people into the brand. And then it's like, oh yeah, and they do digital marketing too, and if I look into that, I can find resources about that. So, you know, me and Vanny were kind of debating on it, because I was thinking, well, like that's B2B, and you know, we're targeting tech companies, and some people come in, but people come in and work with us, some of them because of that, and others for a completely different reason, which is just strictly like business versus kind of how they feel about me, right? So I think Vanny, to your point, you know, we need to really dial in and understand what the motivations are of the target audience before we layer any funnel on, right?
Yeah, and I think also it depends on what our own objectives are, right? Like if, like some of the stuff that you've done that you just talked about, is that really around understanding the personality around the brand, right? The authenticity, that's the trust that you're trying to build up, and you're doing it through your persona and projecting that out. That's a different objective to a lead gen objective, right?
Yeah.
So I think thinking. Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing too, like I know this is where I was talking about, was just that soap opera content that I just found is like way too long. So for B2B, like a VP of marketing in B2B, you know, you would need to customize that soap opera content for that particular audience, because it wouldn't necessarily, this is where we debated, but I don't believe that would work, because those audiences just don't have that kind of time to.
That's fair. Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
It's all towards the same common good, so it's all good. Yeah. Good. Other thoughts, other takeaways? Ileana, did you have anything you want to?
Yeah, this was, like Khalil said, this is actually my favorite book as well, and then Story Brand was my second favorite. This book I feel like is like one of the books that you don't just read it once, read it like multiple times. I didn't realize there were so many funnels. Just there's like one standard funnel, all of them. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, and it was flowing, I guess was the best way to put it. And I find that I'm still referencing and still learning from the book, even though I've already read the book. Little like marks and highlights and stuff in it. So it's a book that does not go on my shelf, stays on the desk, and ooh, I keep learning from it. So
it's a big statement. It's a big statement. Big statement. Okay, cool. Good. Thanks, Ileana. And I do believe that like the creative team stands to benefit a lot from the book, because it's really the type of language that you're using on each stage of the funnel. And it's interesting, before this, Leslie, Roy, and Christina, myself were talking about like the type of language that needs to be on a specific landing page in like a series of funnels. And you really all have to kind of put your heads together and think about like, what is the psychology of the person when they're arriving on that? What have they just done? Have they made a purchase? Have they filled out a form? Have they done a quiz? And like all of those things play into like their state on that next page, and the language you use with them needs to change accordingly, right? So it's it can, you can kind of overthink it, but I think it's good to be like thoughtful and intentional about it. So it's good. Cool. Erica?
Yeah, hey. So yeah, I found it funny, like as I was reading it, I was realizing like I've been like susceptible to like being in someone's value ladder, and continually like getting the emails and whatnot, and then like subscribing and continuing, and that's the reason why I like stick to a certain brand, or like I won't look elsewhere for another company for a particular product, because they are always in my like my viewpoint, my view area. Anyway, like a lot of the things that I learned is an echo of like what's already been said. I don't work like fully in like marketing and like the whole marketing realm. So like this was like a really good learning book and reference book for me to like understand like the back end of how it works, and as a like a knowledge thing. And I definitely will continue to like reference it for sure. So I did really enjoy it, and I loved how like he broke down like the whole process and like gave out examples, and it really made me like think about how it could apply to like what we're doing here, not specifically for like clients, but like maybe for like CDIO or something like that. So yeah, I found that to be really beneficial.
Very cool. Okay, I'll share. I mean, I'll share. There's a couple of words that stood out to me. One was congregation.
Yes.
Like I think when he used the example of like congregation, you think of like church, and then you start to think of like, well, mosques and synagogues and all the different like religious establishments. But then you start to apply that same lens to like online communities, and you think of like, oh, there's like forums about like hacky sack, and there's like forums about devil sticks, and there's, you know, forums about playing dominoes, and you know that like across every single niche. And I know we kind of know that obviously, but the word congregation made me really think about like how people do congregate there, and that it's important for us to use parables. So that was the other word that stood out, which is like, you know, the types of stories that we share within those congregations, right? So look at me, I've become holy in like couple of days. There you go. But you know, like telling stories to engage a congregation of people, and curiosity piquing was the third one that really stood out to me. Like this idea of piquing people's curiosity, because once their curiosity is piqued, it's the right people in the right congregation, and you're telling them the right story that's solving for their issue or pain, then that whole philosophy kind of stood out to me. It's obvious. It's just put in another way that makes it more defined, I think, for me. And adds a little bit of finesse there. Okay, so Carla?
Yeah, to add to the congregation's sentiment, like I think as well, like every brand has their congregation, as you say, but then we also have like, I don't know, I grew up Catholic, and so like the submarine Catholics who would show up at Christmas and Easter. So like I think companies have those kinds of groups of a larger population that will show up at those times, you know, when there's a special offer perhaps, you know, so like we have our congregation, and how do we keep them happy and add value, but then also, you know, continue to attract the exterior audiences. So it was something that I was thinking about too when he mentioned that.
I think it's also good for us to be like aware of that, because I mean we have a list of like 40 people that without even asking them, they would give like a overwhelmingly positive review of us, right? And I mean congregations, it's really brand advocates, I think is kind of like the traditional term. So I think even with our clients, when we're asking questions about who their audience is, it's important to distinguish between like who's their like A tier of brand advocates, and who are the more like the B tier, and then the more like transient customers that might, to your point, show up at Christmas or Easter, but not the rest of the year, right? Because I think sometimes we think of like a customer is a customer for our clients, and that's not the truth either, right? Cool. Other thoughts? Other takeaways before we move on? I know there's lots of nuggets.
A great reminder of how we don't like perfect characters. I think that was pretty interesting. Because actually they like you because you're like them, not perfect. When he talked about the archetypes and who we are talking to, I thought that was pretty interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. And I also now talking about behaviors, something that stood out to me in terms of terminology as well, Riaz, was the hyperactive buyers. And it got me thinking about how we have some clients that might make a better use of this hyperactive buyers. So we can do like upselling and share upselling ideas to them. So I thought that was another word or terminology that we can introduce to our
they talk about upselling and downselling too, right? So
yeah,
cool, good. Okay, so those are our takeaways for now. Let's move on to the second part, which is what did we like and what did we dislike? And this is a good opportunity for us to kind of debate some of the things that we liked or disliked about the book. Anyone want to share their likes or dislikes?
Well, I just like Vanny, I think the emails, the set the stage one was like hard to read, hard to digest.
Like, are you talking about the frequency?
Yeah, like the message, how it is a structure. I feel like someone is talking, like writing as they speak. And I'm not, I have to say that I'm not used to those emails. I usually avoid them. So I think it's interesting that he tries to back up the reasoning behind it, but still, like I'm not a fan myself. So I think it's just makes me think about who are these emails to really. Maybe and just like sometimes we have to step aside and say, I'm not the target audience here. It brings some, makes you reflect on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a couple of brands where I get emails almost daily, right? But the funny thing is I don't unsubscribe. So like maybe I'm not the brand advocate, or maybe I'm not like, the brand advocate, like the main person, but I'm one of the people that opens email maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, or maybe once I'm at Michael's or Old Navy or wherever that is, right? So I think it's like, I don't know, my thinking is that people who unsubscribe probably aren't interested anyways. But again, there's a balance. Everyone has their own thoughts around balance. Obviously, like ClickFunnels and Digital Marketer and these companies, they're sending like an email once every day, twice a day. And if you're staying subscribed, then maybe you're just kind of waiting for that one email, because we don't open every email, right? Just like we don't click on everything that comes on our newsfeed. So I don't know. I'm of two minds on that. I like the personal, like second person tone. Like I like blogs and emails that talk to me or to the person rather than kind of like a third person. But I'm open to other.
I think there's a difference, right? Like, so there was a really great example that Jason actually shared in the I think it was the training Slack channel yesterday, right? And that was a great example of being personable, being authentic, right? As opposed to corporate, like robot, generic template kind of a response. I think that was a perfect example. I think that there's a difference between tone versus a story that goes on and on and on and on as I keep having to scroll to finish what he was saying. And I think I agree with Jackie, like maybe I'm not the target audience for that, but I found that super long. The other thing too, I found is like, sometimes, yeah, I'll just subscribe to something because I'm doing research and I need the information right away. But then like when the whether it's like a online journal or whatever, they start emailing me every single day with an offer, that's when I start to hit unsubscribe, right? The other thing too is just the cold email outreach. I think he had said something about this as well. Like every day on LinkedIn, I get like cold outreach from guys trying to sell, well, Indian guys in India who want to get to know me. God knows why, because I'm an old lady. Number two is people trying to sell me HR stuff and people trying to sell me marketing stuff, right? And it's always like, I don't know this person, don't talk to me, right? So I think cold outreach is really tough too.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because like I was of the same mind that I'm like, oh, I don't want to like spam people and ruin our reputation, but like obviously we've seen over the last year how well that works for ourselves and our clients, right? So yeah, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it, like ultimately comes down to the kind of the data and where that I think that the target decision maker makes a huge difference. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. And I think too, it's like timing, right? So you could do a cold outreach and you happen to catch me at that time when I'm receptive, right? I'm looking for a digital marketing agency. Okay. And you happen to hit me that day or that week, then it's like, sure, why not? I'll have a conversation, right? Otherwise I wouldn't respond to it. So I think there's the timing, but I mean, I don't think as a marketer, you kind of know what that timing is. So that's where, you know, that towards the end, he was talking about the bridges, you know, the various from aware to like consideration, going kind of down that and the different tactics you would use as you go down the funnel. I think that's when that becomes really important, right? Like you do, I think Carla, you were saying you just kind of stuck at the awareness, but I do think it is important as you start to nurture people. Like first you have to generate awareness with like this anonymous set of people that you're trying to go after. They have to know who you are and what you do, right? What services you offer. Once they get to know you, like you still, so when you market, one of the things we realized as a team at one of my companies was that we were so focused on like trying to build content for the top of the funnel and kind of trying to push. And then once we got people, we would try to push them down the funnel, right? What we finally came to realize is that you need to have content going because people come in at different stages of the funnel all the time, right? So, and you don't know how many and when they're going to be coming in, but having that stuff ready to go and kind of mapping to those different, you know, the different steps in the ladder, I guess, where people are, is that they don't always start at the, in our case, the top of the funnel or the bottom of the staircase in this guy's analogy, right? Like they might come in at the middle of the staircase, right? And you have to not forget that too.
It's such a, yeah, that's such an important thing. And that's why in the last, let's say 3 months to 6 months, Michael and I were like kind of doing a lot of research into the flywheel and how the flywheel is going to like overtake the funnel in some capacity, or it's going to be like a combination or a hybrid of the two, because the flywheel is all about respecting that people are coming in at different stages of the journey. And I fully agree that, and I think we do a good job, I think, for example, with like Google ads, like knowing that, okay, you know, these are queries that someone would ask at the top of the funnel because they're problem based. These are queries that someone would ask at the middle of the funnel because it's like integration based or product based or competitor based, and at the bottom of the funnel it's like review based or brand based, right? So I think just even having that cognition that people are at a different stage in their buying journey or psychology, we can actually tailor our campaigns for that. And I think to your other point about like, you know, continuing to pepper with emails, like it's kind of like in the sales world too, you know, you keep calling the same people over again because you know one day they're going to be ready to say, okay, fine, I'm ready for you, right? So but I agree that there might be kind of better ways to do it versus just like a straight email. And many on the team will have, you know, heard me push up the automatic post promotion, where it's like, hey, we should retarget anyone that's visited the website for the next 30 days. And instead of just having a lead magnet or a call to action, just boost whatever's on their social page, on their Facebook page. And the reason is because 90% of that content is going to be educational, entertaining, you know, and enlightening, not like a sales pitch. And so that's why I'm like a big proponent of the automatic post promotion based on website visitor retargeting, because it does the job of staying in front of the right person who's already pre-qualified themselves by going to the website, but it's not like overly over the top. And if they come back and then do some other signal or some other action, which increases the lead score, then you can start to go for like the lead magnet or like the demo request or something, especially in our world, in the B2B world, where the client says, oh, we have like a 6-month buying cycle. And then it's like, after 30 days, they're like, oh, where's the leads? And it's like, wait, you just said it's going to take 6 months. So like, I think it's about making sure that we respect that in the content, the platforms, and the psychology of each stage of the funnel as well. So sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but I got excited. Sonali, you had a...
Oh, yeah. I almost feel like Riaz is speaking my mind today, but better, way better. Yeah, I agree with you, Riaz, on that in terms of, and disagree a little bit with Jackie and Vanny, because I understand what you guys want to say, but like, I still think that overall, email creates that communication. Like, even if I get that email in my inbox, I suddenly remember that brand. Oh yeah, like I might choose to open or not to open, but it still gives me that visibility of that brand, right? And if I go ahead and unsubscribe, I guess it's even like better in a way, like they are qualifying their audience even more, right? Like if somebody is unsubscribing and choosing not to get the emails, like we are anyways qualifying that list. And coming back to what I like about this book, I love this book, honestly. I could barely figure out anything which I don't like. Yes, it's long, it's lengthy. I might have to go back and reread it and make a bunch of notes. But yeah, I love the book, especially funnelology. I'm finding it.
Phonology.
Yes.
Phonology. Yeah, I mean, kind of building on that, it's, yeah, like, I'm just going to use our brands as an example. Like Ad Puzzle, I don't think it'd be a surprise if we sent an email like every 2 days.
Yeah.
CDIO, like, we don't want to piss off people, right? So maybe there's even certain segments that are like for active customers versus prospecting customers. That's another thing that is important, is segmenting your email list based on the signals or the decisions that they've made to either open an email or make a purchase. The last thing we want to do is, spend a month, converting a prospect into a customer of ours, and then they're getting peppered with things that we've explained to them already in the last few calls. So
Yeah, I also think a lot of that, well, email specifically, but it's also going to go into like things like cooking, is understanding the potential impact of things like GDPR, right? Because in Europe, GDPR, it's all about consent-based marketing, right? And also the consent for you to keep somebody's data, that's including their email address and things like that. Now that GDPR hasn't come to Canada, but it certainly has come to the United States. So California, if you don't know, is the only state in the US today that has implemented GDPR, right? And so what does that mean? Like, you can't just, so what it means is I can't just send an email to anybody in California cold, like I just can't do it, right? I have to be able to show that we've had a previous interaction where that person consented to give me their data for me to do an outreach to them, right? So I think also, so the theory behind what he's talking about is good. I think there are things where you have to look at regulatory considerations as well, right? Privacy considerations. But yeah, that's, I think that's something just to take into account.
Totally. Okay, good. Well, we have 10 minutes left, so maybe we can switch to what we're going to implement into our business going forward, or businesses going forward. Anyone want to share their thoughts?
I'm definitely going to use it as sort of a guide with the landing pages and stuff. And funnels I'm working on.
Yeah.
As a perfect example. So it's been kind of helpful just to have a reference guide.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, just to kind of go off of that, I definitely want to be more involved in the understanding of each funnel for every client, just so I can place ads, design them, specifically for that stage in the funnel. I think that's really important. And we do that right now, but I want to, kind of get deeper into that and see what kind of, just design with more intent with the funnel in mind. I think that's really important. So
I think that's a good point. And I think, Jackie and the DS team have an opportunity to like reference specific funnels in book or elsewhere, so that everyone can say, okay, this is the intention, like this is a quiz funnel, or this is a webinar funnel, or this is, so that everyone's on the same page instead of being like, so what's the plan here, guys? And it's like, right. So good.
Yeah. Can I add something, Riaz?
Yeah.
One of the biggest takeaways, I guess we already knew it, but it was like really an eye opener for me. Sometimes we focus so much in terms of ads, like, oh, we want to maximize our ROI, so let's just focus on high ticket products. But like this book shows the value of low ticket products, right? Like free products, or like how to successfully strategically bring your customers in the funnel by offering something like focusing on low ticket product, and then nurture them and make them high paying clients or high paying customers, which is amazing. And there's a huge opportunity for us to go ahead and implement that more.
Yeah, I mean, certainly our clients want to sell the high ticket item, but I think it's our job to manage expectations that by having some type of value ladder, it's going to make it much more effective, right?
I have a question just to kind of take this in from like theory to practical.
Yeah, let's just say a cybersecurity company. What would we do for that?
For me, like what I had written for what would I do going forward, I had said like there's two ways to make it seem like you have the cheapest, best product, the cheapest product out there. And it's by adding more and more value, and you can have a higher price ticket item. And I think for this client in particular, that could be the benefit. And it's about inserting more benefit statements, more value statements, and creating the scene of what you would expect to feel and receive after working with this particular brand. And so
so what would that look like, Carla?
Like I would be, so I would be providing like more specific ad copy maybe requests. So like I would be including maybe 5 or 6 bullet points, value statements that the target audience would receive by working with this particular client.
I think, I brought it up a few times on these calls. It keeps coming back, but do you recall when I was talking about the value equation? Do you guys remember that? The value equation. So
the price, the triangle.
Yeah, let's see if I can.
Yes.
So, right. So you can see that. Yeah. So usually there's a correlation between the seriousness of the problem and then the consequence of that problem on the business or on the person, which is characterized by implication questions, or what we call turning the knife in the sales world, right? Versus the cost of the solution. So going back to the example that Carla used about the cell phone, well, the cell phone was so valuable because the cell phone, you could charge a lot more for it because it's solving a bigger problem, which is now you have contacts that are like billionaires, you know what I mean? So that actually kind of reduces the seriousness of the problem, right? So it reduces the cost of the solution rather, because you're getting more needs payoff from that. So I think kind of going back to the question that Vanny asked Carla, and I think this is more of a universal thing, which is, what are the deficiencies that exist with competitors for this tool, right? When you kind of line them up, what are the things that frustrate the target user about the competitor's solution, and how does our client kind of do a better job of making that experience frictionless? Because that in and of itself is a reason to eliminate, to kind of make that problem. It's a problem that didn't exist, now it does exist, because a pain point with the competitor is an opportunity for us, right? One thing that whenever I'm looking at sourcing new tools, for our company is I'm always asking, what does this tool integrate with? Because if it integrates with our stack of, Slack, Asana, Zoom, G Suite, Workspace, or whatever it's called now, right? Asana, if it integrates, you'll probably have my attention. Now, not every prospect is going to be like that who's going to buy that solution, but I think if they're asking the right questions to me, the salesperson or the website is, or the ad is speaking to the right kind of pain points that I have, then you're going to understand the seriousness of the problem. And then you can also add implication questions, which is, hey, if it doesn't integrate with your stack, what is the consequence of that? Well, it's going to make my life easier. It's going to be duplicate entry. I'm going to have to hire someone to manually enter things, right? So I think one part of it is the problem, but it's also the prospect and what they perceive as a problem as well. So I think that's probably a good question, Carla, for you to find out, which is what are those problems that our clients, customers facing with their existing solution?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about doing that competitive assessment is that people always forget what are so there's competitors in your space or your customer space, but what are the competitive alternatives? Mm-hmm. So outside of the competitors and your solution, what would the customer do if these things didn't exist, right? Is there a different way to do it, right? So it's always also good to look at what are those competitive alternatives as opposed to just looking at competitors as well.
I love that. Cool. Other things that we're going to implement into our day-to-day and in a practical way, to Vanny's point?
I like the idea of funnel hacking. We talked about this before, but just learning from successful brands, how they've built out a funnel and getting inspiration or copying everything. But like, it doesn't just, I don't think it ends at funnels. I think this, like looking at how successful brands do things on every level is always good. I think it's always, somebody has figured this out multiple times. So it's always good to like see what's out there. I know I do this all the time for websites, especially like a UI element. It's like, well, I need this to do something. I'm sure somebody's figured this out. So browsing similar sites or looking at like portfolio sites like Dribble or Behance and seeing how somebody else may have solved that problem and getting inspiration and then bringing it into, and you don't have to necessarily copy it, bit for bit, but always looking at what's out there first. It can give you a lot of good ideas and inspiration for solving particular problems.
I think it was the CEO of IKEA who used to say, steal with pride, customize what you sell for your own purposes, basically, right? So I think, yeah, you're right. It's definitely worth looking out and looking for ideas, especially, in our situation where you're constantly having to come up with new and innovative things all the time. It's good to get ideas from multiple different sources, right?
Awesome.
I'm going to keep the stack slide. I think that's not only useful for sales, but I think it really allows us, when we are meeting with our clients, to just give them like a full, this is what's going very well. Keep that in mind. I want you to know that. This is the opportunities. These are the opportunities that we found. And this is what we're doing at the end. These are our agreements. Like having everything in just one slide, I've found like there's a huge benefit because it really they feel like we're really being transparent, concrete, accountable. So I'm keeping that one as well on mind.
Great. Okay. Well, it's just about the end of the hour. So thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I think this was a great book. It's our reference guide. Ileana's going to keep it on her desk. So we'll test her every so often to see if it's there or not. And before we sign off, before we stop the recording here, For those of you who have been following along and reading with us, which is a surprising amount actually, who tell me that they've been reading with us. So thank you for doing that. Our next book was selected by none other than Mrs. Vanny Edwardson. And that book is Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol S. Dweck. Vanny, do you want to share what everyone has to look forward to with this book?
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought, as we're launching a new coaching, I don't know if it's a process or framework foundation for the company, right? Mindset is a really good way to get yourself into the mindset of being growth oriented, right? And what's nice I find about this book is that it's not super theoretical, and it gives tons of examples from different aspects of your life. So there's lots of examples for those of you who are in sport, that how can you take what you've done in sport and your approach to sport, and how do you translate that into coaching? So one of the things is, like there's tons of like recommendations your manager can give you, your peers can give you in terms of things to do. What this is really going to teach you to be, sometimes, I don't know how to explain this, but sometimes I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where, you're in a conversation with someone and someone's giving you advice on something you should do, they think you should do. Okay. And so you're listening to them, and all of a sudden you're shutting down because you're not so sure that you like what you're hearing, right? Your mind becomes closed. This book helps you to do is to say, first of all, recognize that that's happening and start to put it back open. Because even though you may not like what you're hearing, you've got to be open to the kind of feedback that someone's giving you, because they're giving it to you for a reason, right? Now, whether or not you act on it, that's the growth part of it, right? Is to understand what are those pieces of input and feedback that you're getting from your support network that are valuable and that you need to act on, versus those ones that maybe you take it into consideration, but there's no action required, right? But anyway, read the book. I actually found it super helpful personally. And I think you will too, in terms of just being open to growing yourself as well as your career. I think it's a really great book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanny. So thank you for joining us. .com Secrets, that's the book. Thanks for reading it with us. And next time, Mindset. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.